Janet Porter, thank you so much for joining us. Again, you are the spokeswoman for the MORE campaign. Let's get right to the question. Why do you believe that the Alabama Secretary of State at the 11th hour is going to take the evidence that you put in this court document, much of which alleges voter irregularities that he's already dismissed, that he will change his mind now?
Well, there's two reasons. By the way, it's not just Judge Moore on this case. It's actually voters of Alabama that are also listed as plaintiffs on the case. And it's his job to follow the Supreme Court ruling that makes sure that every vote is cast, that we know that it's counted accurately. And when we have evidence of fraud from three, and yes, they are experts. One gentleman has 3 degrees in mathematics. He's written 4 books on election fraud, and he confirms that there's enough votes, enough fraud that took place in just one county to change the outcome of this election. It is the job of John Merrill to make sure that the elections are free and proper and that they're fair. And this is something that people who care about fair and free elections should call the Secretary of State at 334-242-7200 and let him know we don't want you to certify a fraudulent vote. Investigate it. If you think Doug Jones won, well, let's make sure of it. Let's make sure we get to the bottom of what these experts says is clear evidence of fraud. In fact, this gentleman that I talked about with all of the degrees, he said there is a 1 in 15 billion chance that this vote that happened in 20 precincts in Jefferson County occurred naturally. In other words, this election was fraudulent, and what we need to do is ask the Secretary of State to do his job and to investigate this.
What's the name of the expert that you're referring to?
His name is Richard Charnin, and as I mentioned, 3 degrees of mathematics. He's written 4 books on election fraud. He's a national expert, and he concurs with the other independent experts. And by the way, when I talked to one of the researchers, he's a Democrat. He says this is not about the candidates. It's not about whether it's Republican or Democrat. It's about fair and free elections. He said, I got involved in election integrity because I felt that Bernie Sanders was being cheated. And so this is not about Republican or Democrat.
Okay,
it's about fair and free election. It's the job of John Merrill to do that.
There's another expert that you rely on in this court filing named James Condit Jr. He is somebody who has spoken about Zionist control of world politics, an alleged Israeli role in 9/11 and the terrorist attacks, and other things, including. Hold on, let me finish.
I don't vouch for everybody's opinion on everything. I'm very
I can ask the questions, and then you can answer. Stand by. I'm not done.
All right.
Because he also claims that he has mathematically proven a conspiracy behind the assassination of John F. Kennedy. The reason I bring this up is because this does not sound like somebody who is has credible information and credible enough ability to be an expert to say that Roy Moore should be elected to the Senate.
May I respond?
Please do.
It's interesting you're not talking about Richard Charnin, whose impeccable credentials are off the charts. John Condit, the thing that he admitted into the court had to do with the voting machines. Because we need transparent and open elections. To follow what the Supreme Court has said, that we need to know that our vote was properly counted. What happens is you've got this private company out of Omaha, Nebraska, that has all the votes and the voter images, and no one's allowed to see them. That is a violation of federal law and the Constitution.
But if you're trying to show that something irregularities, why use conspiracy theorists to try to prove that point?
Not everybody.
I
could probably find some anchors on CNN that have some pretty crazy radical ideas, but that's really not what this is about. His expertise is on the voting machines,
to endorse in a court of law.
And he's very well qualified on that issue.
The idea that Roy Moore should have been elected.
Look, it's not about who's elected. It's about making sure the people of Alabama have the right to make that decision. And John Merrill's job, and by the way, Secretary of State John Merrill has been on the wrong side of federal law when he says, he's arguing before the Alabama Supreme Court, that we should destroy the ballot images. In other words, we should destroy the evidence and make sure that nobody has a chance to look at this. That's very suspect, and that's why I think people should be calling John Merrill 334-242-7200. If you want fair and free elections, don't certify what 3 independent experts, and I'm not listing John Condit as one of them, by the way, but I think he is an expert on voting machines, and what he says is valid. But on the issue of what 3 independent experts says, that there is fraud enough in just one county to turn this thing around, and if I was Secretary of State, boy, I'd like to get to the bottom of it no matter who it is that I supported. Because here's the thing that Governor Ivey needs to know. She's up for a re-election too, and there's 650,000 people who are watching this very closely, what they do right now, and if they certify certify what has been proven by 3 independent experts that says this is fraudulent enough to overturn this entire election, then they're going to be accountable at the voting booth, and I wouldn't want to be. And by the way, if they can steal the election from Roy Moore, Governor Ivey, they can steal it from you. Or Secretary of State Merrill, it can happen to you. That's why voter integrity matters no matter where you stand.
I just want to say, for the record, that I mentioned one of your experts, John Condit, has said things like
you brought this up
there's Zionist control.
You know,
but I want to just say for the record that it was Richard Charnin who has said that there is mathematical proof that he has found that the assassination of John F. Kennedy was a conspiracy.
Maybe he got a parking ticket yesterday. That's irrelevant to the case. The case here we're talking about
not irrelevant.
Is there voter fraud? His expertise on voting machines is something you can question. If you want to question, whether he's a Zionist or not, I am. I'm pro-Israel. I'm glad the embassy is in Jerusalem, by the way. Good job,
President
President
that's
Trump.
what he was suggesting, pro-Israel. I think he was saying something else. Let's be honest.
Right, but I'm saying I'm pro-Israel, and what his position is, I care about what he is on voting machines. In fact, one of the experts that we turned to, as I mentioned, was a Democrat. He got involved because he felt that Bernie Sanders was being cheated. It doesn't matter what position, whether you're a Republican or whether you're a Democrat, whether you like Roy Moore or whether you like Doug Jones, you ought to care about the fact that the people of Alabama ought to be the ones making that choice, that this should not be done by some secret private company in Omaha, Nebraska that destroys the ballot images, which is what Secretary of State John Merrill has argued before the Alabama Supreme Court, which, by the way, is in violation of federal law. Federal law says destroying, defacing, mutilating, or altering ballots or official voting records, that you could be facing $5,000 or 5 years in jail.
But the Secretary of State has not found evidence that those things have happened.
Well, we are presenting that evidence, and don't you think that the evidence of 84 pages of experts that have said just one county, we found 20 precincts in Jefferson County. By the way, we found the analysts have done the algorithms, and they know exactly what districts they targeted, and they know exactly what they did. The chances that this was not fraud, 1 in 15 billion, says the Nation expert, the guy by the name of Richard Charnin.
You seem to be out on a limb a little bit here. I know you said that there are voters.
I don't think I'm out on a limb at all. I'm standing for voter integrity.
Let me finish my question, please. You mentioned that there are voters, and I understand and see that on this complaint, on this challenge that you put in court last night. But just in terms of the raw politics here, the biggest supporter that you've had, Steve Bannon, he's been silent on this. His publication, Breitbart, is saying nothing about this.
Can I tell you something else?
That silence is deafening, and I think sends a message,
don't you think? What matters? Let me tell you what matters is the people of Alabama. This is not about Steve Bannon. It's not about Doug Jones. This is about what the people of Alabama, the votes they cast. They have a right to cast the vote and to make sure their vote is counted, to know that it's been properly counted. And that's where John Merrill is not doing his job. He's violating federal law by saying, destroy the evidence, don't let us save those ballot images, and if he certifies this election before we investigate this fraud fully, then he is going to be accountable to those voters in Alabama, and there might just be not enough fraud to make sure that 650,000 people, plus all of those who voted for Roy Moore, whose votes have been altered and discounted, say all the experts, he's going to be accountable. And by the way, if you care about this, you can call him, 334-242-7200. Tell him not to certify until the investigation is done and not to destroy the evidence, which he has argued to do.
I need to ask you about this polygraph test that Roy Moore has said that he has taken, which proves that he is not lying when he denies all of the allegations that have been made against him, sexual abuse, and
let's be honest,
for a 14-year-old child molester. Can you give me the circumstances of that polygraph test? Who administered it? Were there witnesses? So on and so forth.
That's all been submitted to the court. I think it's connected to the complaint.
Well, most people aren't reading all 84 pages. Can you
all I know is that it's a renowned independent expert that he went before, he took the polygraph test, and not surprising to anyone who knows Judge Moore, he completely passed it. What do you know? He didn't know any of these women, and he never engaged in sexual misconduct. What a surprise to those who know him. It's not.
Why didn't he take this polygraph test in the almost a month between the time these allegations came out and his election day?
Dana, we may not agree on much, but you and I agree on that. I will say, if I was the one running the campaign, I would have absolutely seen that that was done. But where we are right now, he took the test, he passed the test, and he also said, hey, all these people who've made these baseless allegations, you do the same. Do a polygraph test, and if there's any variation, let's go to an independent. He's willing to go before somebody that is chosen between the two, they both agree upon, and let everybody take a polygraph test. How about that? That would have been something I would have liked to seen before the election. There's no doubt about it. But it's before the court, and we're hoping that that this judge, the circuit judge, will look at this, and that most importantly, John Merrill, the Secretary of State, will do his job. Make sure that those votes are properly counted. Make sure that the investigation of fraud
Janet,
is
one more
conducted
question
before
about the polygraph. One more question about the polygraph. Do you know, were any of your colleagues on the campaign there with him? Do you know anything more that you can tell us?
I don't know. All I know is that he passed the test, and I'm not surprised in the least.
And the person who administered this was somebody who was completely credible,
and more credible than
the experts that you put out as
look.
Voter,
I'm not. By the way, I've not called John.
Experts.
By the way, I've not called him an expert on the election fraud material. He's the guy that knows about the voting machines and the fact that they are done in secret in Omaha instead of having open and fair and free elections. He's the guy that knows about that, and I don't care if he got a parking ticket or where he stands on anything else.
But it's not about a parking ticket. It goes to the credibility of these experts and the fact that they have made wild claims that are just blatantly false. How do you put them up as people who are going to try to prove that you're right about the election fraud?
You like to pick about somebody's personal opinions that are really irrelevant to this case.
Let
me tell you what is relevant. The experts that have done this, independent of each other, Republicans and Democrats alike, have said there is fraud in this election, just one county, 20 precincts of Jefferson County, enough to turn this whole thing around. And if John Merrill turns his back on these experts who independently agree, so without even an investigation, let's just say we're wrong. Look, it's incumbent upon the Secretary of State to make sure. If I was Doug Jones, I'd want to make sure. I wouldn't want a cloud hanging over my head if I was in the Senate. I'd want to make sure that this election was conducted properly, that the fraud was fully investigated, that I mean, we've got poll workers that have submitted affidavits talking about people voting twice. We've got all kinds of and there are 84 pages.
One last question.
Now,
one last
turning
question
their backs
for you.
on the people of Alabama and all the facts that have been presented.
One last question for you before I let you go. President Trump, at the end of the campaign, was all in. He supported Roy Moore, told voters to go out and vote for him. He then, once the election was over, said that he thought that Roy Moore should concede, and he is another person who is silent on your efforts now. Doesn't that also tell you something, that even the president is not with you on this?
By the way, I think the president is also concerned about voter fraud. He's brought it up in his own election. And I think that if he were to read through the 84 pages of evidence from independent experts and the best in the country, by the way, who say one county, just 20 precincts in one county, Jefferson, is enough to overturn this election. If I was John Merrill and I wanted to run for re-election, I'd make sure that those votes are properly cast and properly counted, and that all allegations of fraud, no matter who makes them, are fully investigated before any fraudulent certification occurs. And if people care, 334-242-7200. Call Secretary of State John Merrill. Tell him, do your job. Investigate the fraud. Do not certify fraudulent elections until the investigation is full and complete.
All right, Janet Porter, thank you for coming on and making your case. And we are going to know in an hour and a half, a little more, whether or not the Secretary of State is going to delay, but it doesn't sound that way.
Whether or not he has a political future, we'll find out very soon, as well as the others on the canvassing board, including Governor Kay Ivey and the Attorney General as well. We'll find that out because, as I mentioned, there are at least 650,000 votes. You know, forget all the fraud for a moment. 650,000 people, despite all the fraudulent allegations, came out and voted for Judge Moore, and they are watching very closely, as well as the country, on whether or not he'll do his job and investigate
whether or not this, well, you're making very clear whether or not this Republican wins in Alabama. There is a Republican civil war in Alabama that is going to continue. We're going to have to leave it there. Janet Porter, thank you so much for your time.